All right, back here on Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour, check out that channel, and you can email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. Again, we're continuing our conversation with Rabbi David Katz of SoulMazal.com. Rabbi, I want to go back to this Bill Cosby thing because Bill Cosby, even though he's not Jewish, was a big part of Hollywood. And I want to know, since they say Hollywood is controlled by Jews, what type of Jew are we looking at? Because he still has the light of God. He's one of the chosen people. But sometimes, I don't know if you notice, Hollywood does some shady stuff. Hollywood does some things we don't really like all the time. So tell us one of the reasons or possible reasons why that may be.
So you're absolutely true. I mean, everyone knows Hollywood and Jews are very much synonymous. I mean, it's not even a conspiracy thing. It's just a fact. I mean, look at the producer list on any movie. It's Rosenberg, Goldblum, Stein,
Right.
So this is part of the story of the Jews in exile. I mean, for a long time. And at the end of the exile, the Jews in America have really come to a level of prominence. People think that this was always the case, and it wasn't. The peasantry in the medieval times was atrocious. The Jewish existence has gone through ups and downs. I mean, I think many more downs than ups in terms of material gain or wealth, even influence. If anything, I think the influence in medieval times was a much more religious cause. And the whole anti-Christianity. I mean, Ramban and those guys were arguing against Christians. Like, that was the prominence. Whether, even the money lenders and money changers, that was all like a Christian Jewish thing. Now it's really not religious at all, unless you consider gefilte fish religious. And now, America took everyone in. I don't know when your family got there. Mine came on those boats, in the early 20th century.
Yeah, mine too.
And, just escaped the war. And my family settled the Ohio River. I don't know, you were down in St. Louis, right?
Yeah, my family went there.
So you were by a river too. And, I had my mother's, I think, grandfather, he went to L.A. So figured that was in the 40s or 50s. And so you had Jews spreading out off of Ellis Island. You're going to get to New York. So you have your New York Jews. Then you have your, Midwestern river settlements. And then you have people going west to California, ultimately. And the Jews in L.A. Had their world. My family along the river there was a world there. There was an industrial world along the Ohio River. And that was a Jewish world. And then the steel mills in Pittsburgh. So Jews in America really became little microcosmic worlds. I mean, it was one Jewish people, the same names, same kind of interests, same Ashkenazi kind of, Yiddishkeit. But the ones in L.A., they went and they became the L.A. Jews. And the point is that at the time, when the exile is at that stage, and by the time we've come to America, I know my grandfather, he broke custom because he wanted to sell watermelons on Saturday. I mean, you're talking about way back in the day. So he bought a truck, and he found out if you're going to make a living, you got to work on Saturday. And a lot of Hasidim came. First thing they did was cut off the beard.
Right.
And it wasn't about assimilation and fitting in. It was about feeding your family and growing accustomed to American life. They spoke Yiddish. Early Hollywood was based on real Yiddish. And so at that point, you're talking about from the shtetl mentality, largely, and thrust into the American melting pot. So you're already coming with Klippa from Europe. And you're talking about a new Klippa of these people never knew what it was to even be outside the community on a Saturday. And now all of a sudden you're working on a Saturday. I mean, I haven't seen a Saturday in like 15 years in terms of the outside world. I wouldn't even know what's out there. I mean, if I just all of a sudden showed up in the world on a Saturday, I mean, you imagine how shocking it would be, just the novelty of it. And so they were all doing it, And you got to figure the associations are radical. I mean, again, take me, a Sfat rabbi who's been up here for 15 years, throw me in L.A. on a Saturday afternoon on Rodeo Drive. What would I even do?
Right.
You know, and they wouldn't even see. I would say something like, what do you do for shopping? He's like nuts. But that's what that was. And they were immersed in the culture, and it was a clash. And sinning happened, things happened. The intermingling took place, and the Jews got involved in lifestyles of America, at different pace. The point being, Klippa went to another level. And let's just go ahead and real quick define what Klippa is according to the Arizal.
Sure.
Right? When you were in a sinning a point of view, and again, it doesn't have to be a radical sin. You were not a great student in yeshiva because you hung out with a class clown. Okay? That's your big sin. You didn't take Talmud seriously. So now you don't know Talmud that well. Okay? And now you're trying to do tshuva 10 years later, and you say, oh, I'm going to start out in Talmud. Why can't you? Because now in your Kiruv class that you go to once a week, the guy next to you, of course, you pulled him right next to you, right? There's your muzzle. He wants to goof around and make fun of the rabbi. And you're like, no, I'm trying to learn. Like, relax. But he thinks you're funny. You think he's funny. And now, how to get rid of this guy? He's a nice guy. You maybe want to go out for beers afterwards, but you also want to learn Talmud. And he's making a joke out of it. That's a klippa. You have a time in your life where you were lo beseder, you weren't doing right, and now you got this guy hanging around. Now you got to deal with it. Now you have to treat him right. You have to love your fellow man. You can't just drop him and say, you're not conducive to my life because it's all about me. You can't do that. So you have to learn how to grow and detach and help him. I mean, that's what the Torah is about. Really managing those relationships. So at that time, he weakens you. Your learning is schwach. It's not so good. You have a hard time sending out the light and elevating the light. If you would know a little more Talmud, you would know how to send the light. But you can't because you keep attracting these kinds of guys. So, pick your poison, whether it's in, your marriage, your boys want to take you out and your wife wants you at home. Whatever it is. We all have it. So that's what a klippa is. He pulls away your energy, your divine light from going up. It weakens you from a place of vulnerability in your earlier existence. Okay, that's klippa. Now, in L.A., you're going to have a lot of klippa, right? Nice Jewish boys and a lot of not so available women, right? Non-Jewish women or whatever arena you're plugged into. And maybe back then in the 50s and 60s, they tried to keep it kosher. But, you're talking about, one guy's, let's say, what do you call it, a cast director, right? Casting. And these are just attractive women keep coming in your office all day long. So at what point do you break down? You're already losing the Yiddishkeit. You're not going to synagogue. You're only going on the high holidays, right? You've lost the beard yarmulke since this, whatever it was, years ago. Now maybe you've already given another generation. Now your kids are following your footsteps. So, the secularization takes hold. And when you put in the Jewish thrust or whatever it makes Hollywood go, immersed in holiness and klippa together, you're going to get a lot of dodgy situations. And you're going to get, Jewish influence as much as every other culture influence, but the Jewish influence is there. And it's a problem.
Now, I guess one thing I'd be curious about, can Kedusha make the Klippa stronger? Because Kedusha itself is so powerful. So let's say it was people that were not so holy and they did stuff on their own. Is that less dangerous than people who are holy that do Klippa?
I'm not sure exactly if this is right with what you're saying, but let me see if this hits. Ready? One word. Ready for the one word?
Sure.
Berg.
Yeah. Pretty well.
Right? You're taking like the Zohar in Hollywood and you're giving it to Madonna. Right? So yeah, that definitely makes Klippa stronger. Because now you're going to get Madonna saying, for sure I belong in the base medrash. Absolutely. My rabbi told me. Right? So already, you got the record producer dealing with Madonna. Okay. A bit of a clippa. Now she says, bring me to shul with you. So, yeah, that's the danger when you don't deal with clippa the right way. Whether it's, or, maybe you can cause anti-Semitism. The guy was in the Nourishkeit. He does tshuva, and he says, get the goyim away from me. I'm holy now. Well, now you're causing anti-Semitism. Now you're stepping on toes, getting rid of people. Maybe you're nasty to the non-Jews that don't get your new Judaism. Whatever it is. I mean, you're really under the jurisdiction of the graces of God at that point.
Now, again, if everyone just joining us, this is a Prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva, and the show on YouTube is Messiah Hour. We're syndicated over there, and you can email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. Now, I was talking about all these big people that are going down. You have Bill Cosby and people in politics, Jennifer Petraeus. You have our own Israeli politicians in recent years, Ehud Olmert, Moshe Katsav, etc. Part of the reason people are being busted is the internet. You have all this wealth of information out there, and when someone sins, it reveals itself a lot quicker than in the past. So I just want to know if you can talk about that and concepts of sinning before the internet and after the internet for our audience.
Well, I think you're like me. You probably weren't too famous, right, when we were in high school, right?
Yeah, that would be me.
So could you imagine if I followed you around in the 90s with a camera documenting everything you did?
I'd be pretty freaked out.
Right. Right, and then uploading it to Facebook, right?
Yeah,
so
it'd be a little weird.
People like us, it doesn't matter in terms of that because no one knew whatever Nourishkeit we were into, like 90% of the population. But, let's take someone like Bill Cosby or someone in the religious world that has influence. And the year is 1975. You think about that, 1975. Do you realize how far the internet is from your mind? It's never going to happen. So if you sin in 1975, no one's ever going to know. Never going to know. You can just pay to cover it up, and you're going to live happily ever after for a long time. The thing is that when the internet comes back, in 2000, all those sins, all that dodgy behavior is now able for upload. And to say about Bill Cosby is a little hard because we don't know exactly the details. So let's make it a bit Jewish for the sake of discussion. Let's say you have a person who's not Jewish, and in 1975 claims to be, and this is a fictitious story, an account, but for context, you have Bob. Bob is a raging missionary, and he's a good sly missionary. 1975, he decides he's going to become a Jew. He just puts on the garment. He knows how to do it. Sets up shop in a new town, and by the year 1995, 20 years later, he's a big Rosh Yeshiva, and he has enough connections that he can pull it off. Now, he never took into account the internet. Fast forward 10 years, 2005. Now all of a sudden people say, is Bob really Jewish? He's kind of a goyish guy. And you start to research, and a little inconvenient fact, Bob's stepbrother has an account on Facebook. Right? And Bob's stepbrother, Bob can't control the stepbrother. So you start to get, family information and family insights. You start to see, I don't think this guy's Jewish. The point is that with the internet, so many, holes in the ship can start to appear. You can't control where the information is going to come from. Look at Obama, with all the conspiracy with him, his brother is some kind of Kenyan Muslim or whatever it is. Eventually the sins that you did in the 70s and 80s, you can't cover it up because it just finds its way to the public forums of the modern internet.
Now, is that also, we know there's a concept of the world speeding up before Mashiach comes. Is part of also this idea of technology, internet, is to bust people so we know who's on the level and who's not and what really is going on?
It could be. You see, it's definitely working out that way. In my own personal work, I think the internet is a pretty quick and accurate telling machine to see who's properly connected and who's a charlatan, who's the shyster. Not just for getting busted, but for are you stealing material? Are you copyright? Having copyright things or plagiarism? Are you nasty? Do you have professionalism? It's a pretty much revealing entity. The internet. Again, what kind of back to that Avon thing? Who are you attracting? Who's your audience? What kind of friends do you have? What's your history like? All those things, the internet is revealing everything. And I think it's kind of like it's a revelation of the psyche. It's like you said, before the end times, we're going to have kind of history become revealed. I mean, I don't think Christianity has ever been more revealed than it is now.
Right.
I mean, every day you're seeing even staunch Christians are questioning Paul and the church. I never heard that as a kid. I'm not even close. Everyone I knew was very serious about their Christianity, even if they didn't get into it that much. But now with the information, it's interesting to find out the dirt.
Now, let's talk a bit about if Judaism is a complete nation, because you were talking about when the Jews went to America, cutting off their beards and getting rid of their yarmulkes, working on Shabbat. And there's also a lot of intermarriage. It's about 67% in America. What does that mean for the Jewish people in terms of klipa, that it's not a complete Jewish nation per se?
So this is also the thing. People think, Jews or religious Jews have a certain kind of level of observance and expectation. The bottom line is, as much as the Jewish people were supposed to be a righteous people and a righteous nation, and let's even say as much as, not that they are, but just even looking at it along those lines is, I think, a bit unfair. The Jewish people are a vast people, right? It's a non-entirely Jewish entity. Anyone that knows my work knows that I teach Ger, right? The non-Jew, the Ger Toshav of the land. And it's not known by a lot of people. We haven't been in the land of Israel with autonomy for a long time, 2,000 years. But there's something called the fourth kahal, the fourth congregation or assembly before God. There's the priest, the Levite, Israelite, and the Ger who can convert to become Jewish, Israelite, or remains non-Jew. And so the Sanhedrin, when it was initially conceived, and I'm talking about the times of the Bible itself, there was two ways of the Sanhedrin's conception, two arrays of its alignment. And the most practical or useful way, and that would become to be used in the temple, was the greatest scholars would congregate to decide who could get married. Because this is why the fourth congregation is problematic. Right? You have a Ger, can you marry a Mamzer? You have a Ger, can you marry a Kohen? You have a Ger, can you marry a Jew? And all these concoctions. So the rabbis had to ascertain, was this marriage kosher? Did this marriage need to get divorced and break up because it goes against the Torah? And this is the whole intermingling of the non-Jew and the Jew in the realm of the permitted. And when it becomes a trespass, right? This is a holy and a mundane that doesn't go together. The rabbis have to say, no, this is not a kosher holy matrimony. So therefore, you have kind of an open revolving door of Israel in the realm of the permitted. You're going to have converts coming in, people flying out and getting off the train, and that conglomerate has gone into exile, moving around the world, and you've brought in riffraff, you've brought in men of nobility, you've lost your noblemen, you've created a Jewish riffraff, and again, that is just an appetite for destruction or for klipa, and it's going to go into the high parts of society and the low parts of society.
All right, last question I have for you in a few minutes. I know this is a pretty big question, but if people out there listening and they say, I want to change my mazal or change the amount of klipa that comes in, I don't want to hang around bad people, whatever, I don't want to draw these bad people, what's something they could do, kind of a quick change in the next few days to get a better mazal, get a better flow coming into them?
I think just doing a bit of reflection, because we all have the friends that we complain about, right? And then that friend pretty much is your klippa, and you'll realize that it's not that your friend's evil, and your friend's a good person, and the first thing you have to do is judge, with favor, right? Don b'chazchut. That's like Pirkei Avos 101, Ethics 101. Don't hate your friend, don't flay him, but understand why there's friction. Why is God nudging you to break away from this person? And then no derech eretz, no Torah, no derech eretz. You have to have personality traits, kind deeds. You have to be a nice person, right? That's not the whole lot of Judaism. But when you move on, and you will move on, and you have moved on, but when you move on, you have to do it like a mensch. You have to, don't break up with a person. Look, Bob, it's not that emotional. Just move on. Move on with your life. Let go of the past. Be in the present. Be honest with yourself. Have a Torah perspective. See the other person's point of view. Let them exist. Sanctify their existence. Those kind of things will allow you to release the klippa, because the klippa will. And again, that person is not the klippa. It's the energy connection that's the klippa, and you have to be willing to move on from the point of repair of what that person was latching onto. If you're just bored and talking about this person about your problems, and they're abusing you over your problems, then stop telling them your problems. Start solving your own problems and stop relying on somebody else. Then it releases them, because maybe you're a klippa to them on the same token, and that's what needs repaired and moved away from, and inspired as something greater.
Great conversation as always. Great stuff. We'll have to talk more about this subject in the future, because it's really fascinating. It's one of the most important things that we do as people and as Jews, is to channel what's coming into us. So they made a whole movie called The Secret, so maybe we'll do an episode about that, talk more Kabbalistically, Jewish sources for that. Our guest this afternoon has been Rabbi David Katz of soulmazal.com, and this is a prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Type in Messiah Hour on YouTube. Check out the Messiah Hour channel. Subscribe to it. Take a look at the videos. We've got a lot of great stuff. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, it is a Jewish country, email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and have a great day.